Theater Guild on the Air presents David Copperfield, offered by the United States Steel Hour. David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, starring Boris Karloff, Flora Robson, Cyril Ritchard, Hugh Williams, and Richard Burton. Helping to build a better America through better steels and products of steel is the job of the industrial family that serves the nation, United States Steel. Look for our trademark, USS, on any steel product. It's your guide to quality steel. And now, as the lights go down at the Belasco Theater in New York, here speaking for the Theater Guild, one of America's foremost theatrical producers, is Roger Pryor with a word about our play and players.
Tonight, for this Christmas Eve, the Theater Guild on the Air brings you David Copperfield, the best-loved of Charles Dickens' immortal novels, played for you by a brilliant all-star cast from Broadway's leading stage successes. As Uriah Heep, you'll hear Boris Karloff, now starring in Peter Pan. As Aunt Betsy Trotwood, Flora Robson, star of Black Chiffon. Our Mr. Micawber is Cyril Ritchard, star of The Relapse, and Hugh Williams, star of The Cocktail Party, as Mr. Wickfield. Richard Burton of The Ladies Not for Burning is David Copperfield, who tells us his own story. Our featured players are Isabel Elsom of The Curious Savage as Peggotty, Brenda Forbes of Ring Around the Moon as Mrs. Micawber, and David Cole of The Innocents, who plays David as a boy. We raise the curtain now on David Copperfield, adapted for radio by Robert Anderson and directed by Homer Fickett.
Whether I shall turn out to be the hero of my own life, or whether that station will be held by anybody else, these pages must show. To begin my life with the beginning of my life, I record that I was born, as I've been informed and believed, on a Friday at 12 o'clock at night. It was remarked that the clock began to strike, and I to cry simultaneously. To the enormous disappointment of my great aunt, Betsy Trotwood, I was born a boy, and therefore was named not Betsy Trotwood Copperfield, but in memory of my recently deceased father, David Copperfield. My first years were happy ones, presided over by my child of a mother with her pretty hair and youthful shape, and by Peggotty, our maid, who had no shape at all, and whose buttons popped off her dress at the slightest exertion.
Come along, Davy, and dance with Peggotty and me.
Peggotty will lose her buttons, Mother.
Law, young Davy's right. Well, then she'll just have to pop them. Here we go, round and round and round.
But the happiness was abruptly ended by the gentleman with the black whiskers, whom my mother married in my 9th year, Mr. Edward Murdstone, who brought into our carefree home his tyrannical doctrine of firmness.
Now, Clara, be firm with the boy. Either he knows his lessons or he does not know them.
I'm afraid he does not know them, do you, Davy? I can do them when it's just you here, Mother, but not when...
And what do you mean by that, I'd like to know?
Edward, you must give him time to get accustomed to you and your manner.
Very well. Master David, I'll give you a sum to do.
Please say it slowly, sir.
Why, of course. If I go into a cheesemonger's shop and buy 5,000 double Gloucester cheeses at 4pence halfpenny each, present payment, and then I buy...
I can't do it. I can't.
Ah, you won't do it, you mean? You're obstinate.
Please, Edward.
Come along with me. Come along.
Where are you taking him?
I tell you, Clara, I have often been flogged myself. Get in there, David.
Please don't. Please don't. Mr. Murdstone, sir, pray don't beat me. I've tried.
Have you indeed? Well, then, try that.
Oh,
and that. And... Ah! Oh, you bite, do you? I'll show you what we do to animals that bite.
For having bitten Mr. Murdstone's hand, I was sent away, over my mother's protests, sent away to school, where my chief humiliation was that upon arrival the headmaster, Mr. Creakle, who never spoke above a whisper, said to me,
"Turn around, young man.
What are you doing, Mr. Creakle?
I'm pinning a sign on your back by order of Mr. Murdstone.
Pray, sir, what kind of sign?
A sign to warn the other boys what kind of a wretch you are.
What does the sign say, if you please, sir?
It says, 'Beware this boy. He bites.'"
Not long after my humiliation at Mr. Creakle's school, I was called back to my home. My mother was ill, her gentle spirit broken by Mr. Murdstone. I had been home a few days when one night Peggotty came to my room.
Davy, are you asleep?
What's the matter, Peggotty?
Oh, my poor precious Davy.
Is it Mamma, Peggotty?
Aye.
Does she want me?
She wanted you, and he wouldn't let you come to her.
I'll go to her now.
No, David, no. Come here.
Peggotty, Mamma isn't worse, is she?
Yes. My precious little Davy.
Much worse?
Yes.
Peggotty, Mamma's dead? Mamma's dead? Oh.
Now, listen to me, David. I have made arrangements for you to go to London, to be employed by Murdstone and Grinby in the wine trade.
But, Mr. Murdstone, the boy is barely 10 years old and his mother dead.
Peggotty, if you please. If he has to fight his way in this world, he might as well start as young as possible. Don't you agree, David?
Yes, sir.
Very well. You must live entirely on what you earn. Now you will leave tomorrow morning. The cartman, Barkis, will fetch you and take you to London, where you will lodge with Mr. and Mrs. Wilkins Micawber.
Mr. Barkis, will you have another piece of cake?
You'd better save some for when you get to London.
Oh, no. They're for the trip.
Did she make 'em now, the cakes?
Peggotty, do you mean, sir?
Ah, her that's seen you all.
Oh, yes. She makes all our pastry and does all our cooking.
Does she, though? No sweethearts, I believe. No person walks with her.
Oh, no. She's never had a sweetheart.
Didn't she, though? So she makes all the apple pasties and does all the cooking, does she?
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you what. Perhaps you might be writing to her?
Oh, yes, I will be.
If you was writing to her, perhaps you'd recollect to say Barkis is willing. Would you?
Is that all the message?
Yes, that's all. Just Barkis is willing.
I arrived in London in the afternoon and was already at work washing, corking, and labelling wine bottles in the rat-infested warehouse of Murdstone and Grinby, when, looking up, I saw coming towards me a stranger. He was a jaunty, stoutish, middle-aged person in a brown coat and black tights and shoes, with no more hair on his head than there is upon an egg.
Do I have the pleasure of addressing Master Copperfield?
Why, yes, sir.
I am that person at whose house you are to reside during your stay in London. In short, I am Mr. Wilkins Micawber.
Oh, Mr. Micawber.
And the impression that your peregrinations in this metropolis have not as yet been extensive, and that you might have some difficulty in penetrating the arcana of the modern Babylon. In short, that you might lose yourself. I should be happy to call this evening and install you in the knowledge of the nearest way home.
As we reached home that evening, it soon was clear to me that Mr. Micawber owed money to almost every tradesman in London.
Hurry up, Micawber!
Gentlemen! Blood cannot be obtained from a stone. Neither can anything on account be obtained at the present from Wilkins Micawber. In short, you are wasting your time. In short, good day. Get inside, Master Copperfield.
Micawber, I was worried for you.
Ah, my darling Emma.
Mr. Micawber, no matter what may come, I will never desert you.
Oh, I'm deeply touched, my dear. Master Copperfield, may I present the partner of me joys and sorrows, the bosom of me affections, in short, Mrs. Micawber.
How much I suffered as a child of 10, working as a labouring hind in the dregs of London, is beyond my power to tell. With my meagre earnings, I could afford only a penny loaf and a pennyworth of milk for breakfast, and often had no dinner at all. My only real happiness came with the Micawbers.
Master Copperfield, I never thought before I was married to Mr. Micawber, when I lived with Papa and Mamma, that I should ever find it necessary to take a lodger.
Are your Mamma and Papa still alive, Mrs. Micawber?
Her mamma departed this life before my difficulties commenced. Her papa lived to bail me out of jail several times and then expired, regretted by a numerous circle.
The twins want their supper.
Oh, and so do we, and so do we.
There's nothing in the house but a crust of bread and a piece of cheese.
Oh.
Perhaps, Master Copperfield.
I think I could just manage to loan you a shilling.
Oh, no, my dear Master Copperfield. But you could render us another kind of service, if you will. I've a few of Mamma's teaspoons I haven't pawned yet.
Oh, Emma, please.
Mr. Micawber's feelings would never allow him to dispose of them, and I'm tied down with the twins just now. I wonder if you would see what you could get for them.
Why, of course, Ma'am. Though I wish you'd accept a shilling from me.
Oh, not just now, Copperfield, thank you.
Mr. Micawber, what do you do? I mean, I have not been able to learn. What is your work?
Me work? Why, at the moment I'm engaged in keeping myself in readiness in case anything should turn up.
But in the month that followed, nothing did turn up for Micawber, except eventually the constable who took him off to debtor's prison. One night, I went to the prison to talk with Mr. Micawber. I found Mrs. Micawber and the twins visiting him.
You have come just in time for good news, Master Copperfield.
What is that, Mrs. Micawber?
Micawber's to be set free in 6 weeks.
And then I have no doubt I shall begin to be beforehand with the world and live in a perfectly new manner, if in short anything turns up.
What will you do when you are free of prison?
Well, I'm journeying into the country where dear Emma's family have some influence.
And do you go with him too, Mrs. Micawber?
I never will desert Mr. Micawber. He has his faults. I do not deny that he is improvident. I do not deny that he has kept me in the dark as to his resources and his liabilities. But I never will desert Mr. Micawber.
There, Emma, me angel. What's the matter?
I never will desert you, Micawber.
Oh, my life, I'm perfectly aware of it now. There.
Mr. Micawber?
Yes, Copperfield?
Since you are going away, I have thought that perhaps I would go away too, to my great-aunt's cottage in Dover.
Oh, what is this great-aunt's name?
Miss Betsy Trotwood.
She's not in my circle of acquaintances. Well then, Copperfield, I've nothing to bestow upon you at parting but advice. And that advice is never to do tomorrow what you can do today. Procrastination is a thief of time. Collar him.
I shall try my best, sir.
My other advice. Annual income, £20. Annual expenditure, £19, 19 shillings. Result, happiness. Annual income, £20. Annual expenditure, £20 plus sixpence. Result, misery. The blossom is blighted, the leaf is withered, the god of day goes down upon the dreary scene, and in short, you're flawed forever, as I am. And so, Copperfield, farewell.
The Dover Road is a beautiful road, but not to a penniless little boy who must trudge every inch on foot. Each milestone might well have been my gravestone, except that I was determined to reach my great-aunt Betsy Trotwood's cottage in Dover. More dead than alive, I at last knocked feebly on her door.
Hello? What's this? Go away! Go along! No boys here!
If you please, Mom.
You're one of those miserable boys that rides the donkeys across my garden. Go along.
If you please, Aunt.
People are always riding donkeys through my garden.
If you please, Aunt. I am your nephew.
Aunt? Mercy. Hold me up, somebody. Help me. Janet! Janet!
Please, Aunt. It's the truth.
What's the matter, Miss Trotwood?
Donkeys? Donkeys? This boy.
I am David Copperfield of Blunderstone, where you came on the night when I was born and saw my dear Mamma.
This is the boy that should have been a girl.
Since my Mamma died, I have been taught nothing and thrown upon myself and put to work not fit for me. And so I've run away to you from London.
Oh, mercy on us, the poor boy. What shall we do, Janet?
Wash him and put him to bed.
Exactly so. A brilliant suggestion. Exactly so.
My aunt wrote to Mr. Murdstone to pay her a call so that they might decide what was to become of me.
I am here, Miss Trotwood, to take David back, to dispose of him as I think proper.
To dispose of him? What a way to talk of a child.
I am here to take him away. If he is not ready to go, my doors are shut against him henceforth.
Are they now?
Yes.
Then mine shall be open to him.
And what do you intend to do with the wretch?
I shall send him to school in Canterbury, where he can live with my good friend and lawyer, Mr. Whitfield, finest man I know.
Miss Trotwood, I
you
tell you...
may go when you like, Mr. Murdstone. And in leaving, mind you don't ride your donkey through my garden.
And so my good Aunt Betsy sent me off to Canterbury to school, but not before giving me some advice, which I've always tried to heed.
Remember, David, never be mean in anything. Never be false, never be cruel. Avoid these 3 vices, and I can always be hopeful for you.
The great bells of the Cathedral at Canterbury were ringing as I arrived at the home of Mr. Whitfield, with whom I was to stay. He came towards me, a fine, generous, hearty man.
Master Copperfield, I am delighted to welcome you to my home.
How do you do, Mr. Whitfield? My Aunt Betsy sends her regards.
Thank you, David. And now I should like to present to you my little housekeeper and beloved daughter, Agnes.
How do you do, David? How do you do, Agnes?
Agnes has presided over my household since her dear mother died.
Papa.
Agnes knows it saddens me to talk of my departed wife. And here comes the 3rd member of our household, my trusted law clerk, Uriah Heep.
Oh, Mr. Whitfield, sir. I'm far too humble to be included as one of your household. Far too humble.
Oh, Uriah, that's rubbish. Shake hands with Master Copperfield.
Oh, indeed, if he'll be so kind as to give me his hand. There. You see how he withdraws his hand? It's unpleasant for him to shake hands with such an humble person.
Oh no, sir. It's not that. It's just...
Papa, shall I show David his room?
Yes, my dear. And Uriah, take Master Copperfield's things for him. They're too heavy for him to handle alone.
Oh, yes, sir, Mr. Whitfield, sir. It'll be my pleasure.
Mr. Whitfield?
Yes, David?
Uriah's hand. It's cold and bony, like a skeleton.
Thus was I welcomed into the Whitfield household, as a son and as a brother, a warm, friendly household, over which Uriah Heep seemed to hover like some great, evil bat. Innocent as I was, even at the age of 11, I think I sensed his hypocrisy.
You're working late tonight, Uriah.
Master Copperfield, like you, I'm studying. I'm improving my legal knowledge.
I suppose you are quite a great lawyer.
Me, Master Copperfield? Oh, no, I'm a very humble person. But I've much to be thankful for in living with Mr. Whitfield. For it's Mr. Whitfield's intentions to give me my articles, which would otherwise not lie within the humble means of mother and self.
Perhaps you'll be a partner in Mr. Whitfield's business one of these days. And it'll be Whitfield and Heath.
Oh, no, Master Copperfield. I'm much too humble for that.
You two having a pleasant talk?
Oh, yes, Mr. Whitfield, sir. Very pleasant.
I saw the light in here, and I wanted to make sure that you understood what work you are to do tomorrow.
I think I do, sir.
You have the routine accounts to draw up, but the most important thing is to make a report to Miss Trotwood of how we are handling her investment.
Oh, yes, sir. That's what I understood.
Good night, then. Good night, David.
Good night, sir.
Oh, a most excellent man.
Do you find studying the law easy, Uriah?
It's hard for me sometimes, but I don't know what it might be to a gifted person. There are Latin terms that are trying to a reader of my humble attainments.
Well, I could teach you Latin as I learn it.
Oh, thank you, Master Copperfield. I'm sure it's very kind of you to offer, but I'm much too humble to accept it.
Oh, that's nonsense, Uriah.
Oh, no, sir. There are people enough to tread upon me in my lowly state without me doing outrage to their feelings by possessing learning. Learning ain't for me. A person like myself had better not aspire. If he's to get on in life, Master Copperfield, he must get on humbly.
And so passed my school days. Days of happiness. Days with Agnes, my counselor and friend. Suddenly they were over, and I was 17 and bidding Agnes goodbye before I left for London to seek my fortune.
We'll miss you, David, when you go away. The house will not be like itself.
Or shall I be like myself, dear Agnes, without you? I seem to lack my right hand when I miss you, dear sister.
Dear sister?
Yes, for you've guided me like a sister. Do you mind my calling you that?
No, I don't mind. Although I wish...
What, Agnes?
Nothing, David. You may call me sister, if that's how you feel towards me.
Oh, I do. And even though I'm in London, I shall continue to confide in you as a sister. Whenever I fall into trouble or when I fall in love in earnest, I shall always tell you.
And I shall be waiting to listen.
I wonder that you were not in love in earnest by this time, Agnes.
Perhaps I am.
But you can't be. There is no one hereabouts deserves to love you.
I did not say that he loved me.
You were teasing me with riddles, Agnes. Just mind you don't marry someone without my consent.
I promise you, I shall marry no one unless it is someone you approve of.
Goodbye, Agnes. Will I see you in London?
Yes, David, from time to time, so that you may tell me when you fall in love, in earnest.
You are listening to David Copperfield, produced by the Theatre Guild on the Air, presented by the United States Steel Corporation.
We pause now for station identification. Now the curtain rises on the second act of David Copperfield, starring Boris Karloff as Uriah Heath, Flora Robson as Betsy Trotwood, Cyril Richard as Mr. Micawber, Hugh Williams as Mr. Whitfield, and Richard Burton as David.
I had been in London barely a month when I had need of Agnes, for I'd fallen in love in earnest. Mr. Spenlow, under whom I was training for the law, had taken me to his house for a Saturday and Sunday. he sent me on into the house alone. And there, standing in the hall, with the little dog clutched in her arms, was an apparition of brown curls, blue ribbon, and frilly white lace.
You must be Mr. Copperfield. I'm Dora Spenlow.
She may have said more, but I didn't hear it. All was over in a moment. I'd fulfilled my destiny. I'd loved Dora Spenlow to distraction. I was gone headlong before I'd sense to say a word to her. It was not until the next morning, when we met in the garden, that I spoke to her.
Good morning, Mr. Copperfield.
You are out early, Miss Spenlow.
My governess is so stupid. She talks such nonsense about it being necessary for the day to be aired before I come out. Aired. Besides, it's the brightest time in the whole day. Don't you think so?
It's very bright for me now, though it had been very dark to me a minute ago.
Do you mean a compliment? Or that the weather has really changed, Mr. Copperfield?
Well,
Yes, Jip. Jip has saved you more embarrassment, Mr. Copperfield, haven't you, Jip? Why is there all this talk about my needing a governess to protect me, when little Jip here can protect me a great deal better? Can't you?
He's a very nice little dog.
He's much better than a cross old governess who follows us about and tries to teach us sums and all sorts of practical things.
Do you suppose he'd allow me to pet him?
I do believe Jip is jealous of you, Mr. Copperfield. Jip, are you jealous of Mr. Copperfield?
When I wrote to Agnes, telling her of my happiness with Dora, she answered with sweet encouragement. But always there was a note of mystery and sadness when she wrote about her own life. The reason for this I learned one evening when Uriah Heep came from Canterbury and called on me in my rooms.
Master Copperfield, I mean Mr. Copperfield. You've heard something, I dare say, of a change in my expectations?
No, I have not.
Oh, then I shall have the pleasure myself. Actually, it was you who prophesied.
Prophesied what?
Don't you remember saying to me once that perhaps it might one day be Wickfield and Heap?
What do you mean?
And I recollect saying that I was much too humble and...
Uriah, tell me, what do you mean?
Why, I mean that now it is Wickfield and Heap.
No.
Oh, what a worthy man is Mr. Wickfield, but how imprudent.
Imprudent?
Oh, Master Copperfield, it's not for an humble person like myself to talk of such a worthy as Mr. Wickfield. I've only to allude to his imprudence in the matter of drinking.
But surely he can't.
Oh, my, yes, Master Copperfield. If anyone else had been in my place during the last year, by this time he'd have had Mr. Wickfield under his thumb. Quite under his thumb.
But you, I suppose you...
Oh, I, Master Copperfield. I have been but his humble helper.
I must see Agnes about this, and at once.
Oh, I wish you would. She's here in London. She's lovely, isn't she, Master Copperfield?
She is superior in all respects to anyone around her.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
There is no reason why you should thank me.
Oh, Master Copperfield. Humble as I am, humble as my mother is, the image of Miss Agnes has been in my breast for years.
Best not talk like this, Uriah.
Oh, with what a pure affection do I love the ground my Agnes walks on.
Have you mentioned this to her?
Oh, no, Master Copperfield. My Agnes is very young, and I still have to work my way upward. I'm only just emerging from my lowly station.
No matter what your station, she would never consent.
Master Copperfield, I rest a good deal of hope on her observing how useful I am to her father. She's so much attached to her father that I think she may come on his account to be friendly to me.
So that's your scheme.
And I'm telling it you, Master Copperfield, so that you will not unconsciously go against me. I know that you wouldn't wish to make unpleasantness in the family. Would you, Master Copperfield?
Agnes, I've just come from Uriah Heep. How did your father...
It's too horrible to talk about, David.
But you saw how Father night after night sat morosely mourning Mother's death, seeking refuge from his sorrows in the ever-present bottle of port.
So it was that.
Uriah saw it too. And little by little he exploited Papa's weaknesses. When I would lock up the wine, he would get Papa more.
Agnes, my dear.
He finally made himself indispensable to Papa. And then he told him he was going away, unless Papa cared to make some other arrangement with him.
That other arrangement being the partnership. Oh, it's incredible.
Yes, and horrible. For since that time, Papa is actually afraid of him.
Your father, afraid of Uriah Heep?
Yes. Oh, there's something between them. Some mystery I do not understand, and probably never shall.
Oh, Agnes, let me help you.
David, please. The only way you can help us is to be kind to Uriah.
Kind to him? But you know what he plans, what he...
It makes no difference. We have no other choice. Because Papa and I, horrible as it is to say, Papa and I, we are in his power.
For the next month, I lived on Dora and coffee. When I wasn't calling on Dora, I was working hard that I might be worthy of Dora. As for Agnes, I didn't tell her of Uriah Heep's plans for her, because I knew it would distress her. And since Uriah had yet to work his way up a little more, I thought I had time. Meanwhile, I had a letter from that master of all letter writers, Micawber.
You find me dear Copperfield, engaged in the sale of corn upon commission. However, it's not an avocation of remunerative description. In other words, it does not pay. I am, however, delighted to add that I now have an immediate prospect of something turning up.
To hear of his prospects, I invited Micawber and his wife to my rooms for dinner.
As we are quite confidential here, Mr. Copperfield, I should like to have your opinion as to what branch of endeavour a man of Mr. Micawber's talents is likely to succeed in.
You embarrass me, my dear Emma.
If my opinion can be of help, I should be glad to give it.
I may have a conviction, Mr. Copperfield, that Mr. Micawber's manner qualifies him for the banking business.
Mr. Micawber feels that if he had a deposit at the banking house, my manner, as representing that banking house, would inspire confidence in her.
But if the various banking houses refuse to avail themselves of Mr. Micawber's abilities, what is the use of dwelling on that idea?
In short, Copperfield, my wife is convinced, and she's convinced me, that things cannot be expected to turn up of themselves. We must, in a measure, assist them in turning up.
So, here is Mr. Micawber with a great talent. I should say genius, but that may be the partiality of a wife.
Emma, my dear.
It's true.
What Mrs. Micawber is trying to say is that here I am with my capacities and without suitable employment. Now, where does the responsibility rest? Clearly on society.
Oh, it does indeed.
And so it appears to her, Copperfield, that what I should do is to throw down the gauntlet to society and say, in effect, show me who will take that up.
I quite agree, but how is this to be done?
By advertising. Mr. Micawber has to advertise in all the papers for a position worthy of his talent.
I feel I must do this, Copperfield, in justice to myself, in justice to my family, and in justice to society.
Shortly after I loaned Mr. Micawber the money to pay for his advertisement, I had cause to regret my extravagance. For my aunt, Betsy Trotwood, upon whose generous bounty I had been living, came to London with sad news.
These are comfortable rooms you have here, David.
They're as reasonable as I could find out.
That's just as well, because from now on I shall be living here with you.
As a chaperone, Aunt?
What makes you say that?
You were cross that Dora and I are engaged.
Oh, of course I'm not cross. Though I think you are a little blind.
Blind?
Yes, blind as to where your true love lies.
Aunt, I know Dora and I are young and inexperienced, but we love one another truly.
Poor little couple. You think you are formed for one another and to go through a party, supper table kind of life like two pretty pieces of confectionery.
Aunt, have you come to stay with me to dissuade me from Dora?
No, David. I've come to stay with you because I'm ruined.
Ruined?
Yes. It's a frumpy, grumpy story, David, but suffice it to say that I invested unwisely and am ruined.
But Mr. Wickfield handles all your...
No, these I invested myself. Mr. Wickfield had, nothing to do with it. Oh, David, I know this alters your plans somewhat. I don't know what your Dora will say.
All right.
But we must meet reverses boldly and not suffer them to frighten us, my dear. We must learn to act the play out. We must live misfortune down.
Don't you? Look down. Davy has something to say to me.
Dora?
Yes, Dodie?
Dora, could you love a beggar?
How can you ask anything so foolish, Dodie?
Dora, my own dearest, I am a beggar.
Oh, how can you be such a silly thing? I'll make you bite you.
Dora, I am your ruined David. I have not a penny. I must tell you this and offer you release from our engagement if you want it.
Oh, Dodie, don't talk like that.
Oh, my sweet Dora, does that mean your heart is still mine?
Yes, Dodie. Only don't be dreadful. Don't be practical. Because when you're practical, it frightens me so.
Some time thereafter, I received a letter from Canterbury. I was surprised to see that the address was not in Agnes's handwriting. I opened the letter and was amazed to read...
My dear Copperfield, you may possibly not be unprepared to receive the information that as a result to be flinging down the gauntlet to society, in short, as a result of me advertising, something has turned up. In fact, my dear Copperfield, I stand pledged and contracted to your old friend Uriah Heep to assist him in the capacity of, to be his confidential clerk. Mrs. Micawber is convinced that giving me mind to a profession so adapted to me fertile resources and me flow of language, I must distinguish myself and may find myself ere long a judge or a chancellor. Looking forward to our early reunion, I am ever yours, Wilkins Micawber.
Curious at this turn of events, I travelled down to Canterbury to see Micawber in his new surroundings.
My dear Copperfield, to a man possessed of the higher imaginative powers, the objection to legal work is the amount of detail which it involves.
How do you find Mr. Heep as an employer?
All I can say is that my friend Heep has been most generous in advancing me financial assistance.
And Mr. Wickfield?
Mr. Wickfield is, I dare say, a man of very excellent intentions, but he is, in short, he is obsolete.
I'm afraid his partner seeks to make him so.
My dear Copperfield, I am here in a capacity of confidence. I would therefore suggest that in our intercourse we draw a line. On this side is the whole range of human intellect, with a trifling exception, and on the other is that exception, the affairs of Messrs. Wickfield and Heep.
He has won you over, hasn't he, Micawber?
Oh, don't close the door, Miss Wickfield. I'm just on my way to my humble dwelling. Good day, Copperfield. Miss Wickfield.
Ah, Agnes. How I've missed you lately.
Indeed, and so soon.
You were so much in the habit of thinking for me in the old days that my reliance is still on you.
But it must not be on me, David. It must be on someone else.
On Dora?
Of course. You still love her, don't you, David?
Oh, Agnes, you should see her. I've never seen such dancing blue eyes, such curls.
Yes, you do love her.
Are you sad that I'm in love, Agnes? You sounded sad.
Of course I'm not sad, David. I'm very happy for you.
Agnes, there's no one else but you to tell me. Dare I ask her to marry me?
If she will make you happy. If she will make you happy, I think you should ask her.
Oh, Agnes, you've never seen such adorable hands, such
I'm
exquisite...
sure, David. But you must tell us all about her at dinner. Now I must go to Father.
Oh, forgive me. In my happiness, I didn't ask.
You will see him at dinner. He is not the man you knew, David.
He hardly dares to speak now without consulting Uriah with his eyes. But you shall see.
After dinner that evening, Mr. Wickfield, Uriah, and I were left at the table alone.
Mr. Wickfield, old friend and partner, let me fill your glass for another toast.
I think we have drunk enough toast, Uriah.
David, if Uriah wants us to drink another toast, perhaps we'd better.
But Mr. Wickfield...
We mustn't offend him, David.
There now, fellow partner, Master Copperfield, I am about to drink to the divinest of her sex.
Uriah, mind what you say.
I know I am but an humble individual to give you her health. But I admire her. I adore her.
Uriah?
Now, Davy. Uriah has a right to toast his sweetheart if he will. Who is she, Uriah? To whom do we drink?
To Agnes Wickfield.
No!
Mr. Wickfield!
To be her father is a proud distinction, but to be her husband...
Stop! I will not stay here and listen to such blasphemy.
If I say I've an ambition to make your Agnes my Agnes, I have as good a right to it as any man.
You detestable serpent. Look at him, David. Look at my torturer. Under his influence, I have step by step abandoned name and reputation, peace and quiet, house and home. And now...
Mr. Wickfield, I have kept your name and reputation and your peace and quiet and your house and home.
Oh, David. What have I come down to since I first saw you in this house? Weak indulgence has ruined me. Indulgence in remembrance of my wife. And indulgence in forgetfulness offered by this. I have taken my last glass. I swear I have taken my last glass.
Oh, come now, Mr. Wickfield.
David, I'll tell you all about this fellow here.
You stop him, Copperfield, or he'll say things he'll be sorry to have said, and you'll be sorry to have heard.
I'll say anything. Why should I not be in all the world's power if I am in yours?
Because you have a daughter.
Scoundrel!
Now, let sleeping dogs lie. Who wants to rouse them? Can't you see? I'm as humble as can be.
Humble? You humble? You hypocrite!
Mr. Wickfield!
Well, Master Copperfield, I suppose you have sometimes plucked a pear before it was ripe.
Good night, Heath.
I did that tonight. But it'll ripen yet. It only wants attending to. I can wait.
And now weeks, months, seasons pass along. They seem little more than a summer day and a winter evening. Yet in that time I had been reasonably successful in my work, and above all else I had come of age and married Dora Spenlow. And I found marriage a strange condition. It was such a stupendous thing to know for certain that Dora put her hair up in papers. It was altogether such an astonishing event to see her do it. It was also a painful thing to wait dinner because of Dora's inability to manage the cook.
I did but see her passing by, and yet I'll love her till I die.
My dear, do you think the cook has any idea of time?
Why do you ask, Dodie?
Well, because it's 7 and we were to have dined at 6. Don't you think you should talk with the cook?
Oh, no, please, I couldn't.
Why not?
Because I'm such a silly, and she knows I am.
But, my love...
Oh, no, please. Don't be a naughty Bluebeard. Don't be serious.
My sweet, I'm only trying to reason with you.
I didn't marry to be reasoned with. If you meant to reason with such a poor little girl as I am, you oughtn't have told me so, you cruel boy.
Dora, my darling.
No, I'm not your darling. Because you must be sorry you married me, or else you wouldn't reason with me.
I'm sorry, my love. I won't try to reason with you. I promise.
That's right, Dodie. Because reasoning makes me uncomfortable. And it's much better for me to be stupid than uncomfortable.
Aunt Betsy called her Little Blossom. and it seemed a gay name at first for my child wife, not meant for the cares and worries of this world. But when she took sick and weakened that winter, and I had to carry her up and down stairs, I thought, oh, what a fatal name it was, and how the blossom withered in its bloom upon the tree. And then, one night near the end, Dora called me to her side.
Dodie.
Yes, my darling?
Dodie, I'm going to say something I have often thought of. Will you mind?
Mind, my darling?
Perhaps you have often thought the same.
What is that, my dear?
I'm afraid I was too young.
Now, Dora.
Not just in years, but in experience and thoughts and everything.
Dora, don't.
I was such a silly little creature. I'm afraid it would have been better if we had only loved each other as boy and girl and forgotten it.
Oh, my Dora.
I have begun to think I was not fit to be a wife.
Soon after Dora's death, my mind was taken off my own troubles by a letter from Mr. Wickfield.
Dear David, Mr. Micawber, an old acquaintance of yours, I believe, has made some rather startling discoveries concerning the activities of Uriah Heep, and begs that you and your aunt travel to Canterbury to be present at what he characteristically calls an explosion. I am unable to take an active part in this, being confined to my bed with rheumatic fever. But I know that you will not fail me in this, my hour of need. Your friend, Wickfield.
Miss Betsy Trotwood, Mr. David Copperfield, calling on Mr. Heap.
Well, I'm sure this is an unexpected pleasure. Miss Trotwood, Master Copperfield.
Mr. Heap.
Mr. Heap. Things have changed in this office, Miss Trotwood, since I was an humble clerk at El Japone, ain't they? But I'm not changed, Miss Trotwood.
To tell you the truth, sir, I think you are pretty constant to the promise of your youth, if that's any satisfaction.
Oh, thank you for your good opinion. You needn't wait, Micawber. Won't you sit down, Miss Trotwood? David?
I prefer standing, thank you.
Micawber, did you hear me tell you not to wait?
Yes.
Then why do you wait?
Because I, in short, choose.
You're a dissipated fellow, as all the world knows, and I'm afraid you'll oblige me to get rid of you. Go along, and I'll talk to you presently.
If there's a scoundrel with whom I've already talked too much, that scoundrel's name is Heap.
Why, you insolent...
Hold on, Uriah.
Sit down, Mr. Heap.
Oh, ho! So this is a conspiracy. You've met here by appointment.
They met here at the request of your no longer humble servant, Wilkins Micawber.
Master Copperfield, you always wear a puppy with a broad stomach even from your first coming here. And you envy me rise, do you?
Your rise.
Mr. Micawber, proceed with your charge.
I have written it all here in a brief letter.
Yes, and save the man. He'd write letters by the ream, even if it was a capital offence.
Are you going to listen to this scum's charges against me?
We are indeed. Proceed, Micawber.
Dear Miss Trotwood and gentlemen, in appearing before you to denounce probably the most consummate villain that has ever existed, I ask no consideration for myself. The victim from the cradle of pecuniary liabilities, to which I have been unable to respond, I have ever been the sport and toy of debasing circumstances. Ignominy, want, despair, madness, have collectively or separately been the attendants of my career.
Madness indeed, and you listen to this wretch.
Under such circumstances, I entered the office of the firm, nominally under the appellation of Wickfield and Heap, but in reality wielded by Heap alone. Heap, and only Heap, is the forger and cheat.
The devil take you. Give me that letter.
Approach one step nearer, and if your head is human, I'll break it.
No. Get on with your charge, man.
I'll listen to no more of this.
You'll stay in this room, you heap of infamy. Now sit down there, Heap. Now, where was I? Oh, yes. Forced as I was to avail myself of pecuniary advances offered by this contemptible Heap, I soon found myself by reason of numerous IOUs under his thumb. I then found that my services were constantly being called into requisition for the falsification of business and the mystification of Mr. Wickfield.
If you don't stop now...
Pray, Uriah, don't stop him now that he's getting at last to the point.
When Mr. Wickfield's faculties and memory for business became, through causes which it is not necessary or expedient for me to enter, weakened and confused, he obtained his signature to documents of importance, representing them to be other documents of no importance.
You shall prove this, Micawber.
The proof of this is at hand, as well as the proof that you systematically forged to various entries, books, and documents the signature of Mr. Wickfield.
Uriah Heep, you know what I want.
These are all lies.
Sit down, Heap.
I want my property.
But Aunt Betsy...
As long as I believed it had been made away with by Mr. Wickfield, I wouldn't breathe a syllable of it having been placed here for investment. But now that I know this fellow's answerable for it, I'll have it. David, come and take it away from him.
Everything will be taken from him in good time, Aunt.
Including his humbleness.
Where is your proof? Where is your proof?
There are the books and documents.
Ah, yes, if you had them, but you haven't. They're here in the safe. There, see where they... Where are they? They've gone.
Fancy that.
Some miserable thief has stolen the books.
They've come into Copperfield's possession. He has the power of attorney for Mr. Wickfield.
So you have them, do you? Well, what's to be done?
I will tell you what's to be done.
You, as Copperfield no tongue?
You must make restoration of all you have stolen to the last farthing.
I won't do it. I won't do it. I may be humbled, but I will not be put upon.
Micawber, you will go around to the Guildhall and bring a couple of officers.
Stop. Copperfield, I've always hated you. You've always been an upstart, and you've always been against me.
Micawber?
All right. I'll do what you want.
It is you, Uriah, who have been in your greed and cunning against the world. There never were greed and cunning in the world yet that did not do too much and overreach themselves. It is as certain as death. Now then,
Copperfield, I've not quite finished my letter. May I proceed?
Please do.
I have now concluded. It merely remains for me, with me ill-starred family, to disappear from the landscape on which we appear to be an encumbrance. Let it be in justice merely said of me, as of a gallant and eminent naval hero with whom I have no pretensions to cope, that what I have done I did in spite of mercenary and selfish objects, for England, home, and beauty. Yours, etc., 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 Wilkins Micawber.
Now my story nears its end. I have but to record that when Aunt Betsy regained her property, she paid off all Micawber's debts and sent him to start his life anew in Australia, where, by virtue of his diligence and application, he in time justified Mrs. Micawber's faith in him and became a magistrate. As for me, I returned to England after a year of travel, returned to recapture, if possible, a treasure I had unwittingly thrown away in my boyhood. And on Christmas Eve, I stood before the fire in the Wickfield parlour in Canterbury and watched Agnes.
David, why do you look at me so closely?
Try to guess your secret.
My secret?
Yes. Let me share it. My aunt has told me.
What has she told you?
That you are in love. That is your secret, isn't it?
If it is, it is not a new one.
Not new? Then I must know him.
You do, as well as you know yourself.
Myself? Agnes. Agnes, look at me.
Spare me my blushes, David.
Oh, Agnes, if you only knew. I went away loving you. I stayed away loving you, and I've returned home loving you.
Oh, David.
But I never dreamed that you could love me.
Didn't you know, David? Hadn't you ever guessed?
But when, my darling? When did you... when did it all...
I have loved you all my life.
The curtain has fallen on the Theater Guild on-the-air production of David Copperfield, sponsored by the United States Steel Corporation. We express our thanks to our stars: Boris Karloff as Uriah Heep, Flora Robson as Betsy Trotwood, Cyril Richard as Mr. Micawber, Hugh Williams as Mr. Wickfield, and Richard Burton as David. Our thanks also to our featured players: Isabel Elson as Peggotty, Brenda Forbes as Mrs. Micawber, and David Cole as the boy David, and to the other members of our cast whom you heard in these roles: as Agnes, Penelope Mundy; as Dora, Patricia Marmont; as Murdstone, John Merivale; and as Barkis, Carl Harbord. And here is Roger Pryor with a word about next week's play.
Next week, New Year's Eve, with Van Heflin as our star, the Theater Guild on the Air brings you State Fair, that heartwarming, robust, and truly American story that you remember as a successful novel and motion picture. Co-starring with Van Heflin, you'll hear Gene Lockhart, his wife, Kathleen Lockhart, and their daughter, June Lockhart, playing the roles of father, mother, and daughter in the story.
Remember, next week on the United States Steel Hour, State Fair, starring Van Heflin, Gene Lockhart, Kathleen Lockhart, and June Lockhart. And remember, too, that the trademark of United States Steel, USS, on any steel product is your guide to quality steel. The Theater Guild on the Air is under the supervision of Lawrence Langner and Teresa Helburn, with Armina Marshall executive producer. S. Mark Smith is editor. Music was composed and conducted by Harold Levy. Your announcer is Norman Brokenshire. The United States Steel Corporation hopes that you'll be with us next Sunday at the same time.